What comes to your mind when you think about Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links? Is it a yellow button that plays your entire deck for you? Is it the latest FTK that somehow managed to get King of Games?
That's crazy. Thank you for playing Duel Links.
Perhaps it's your favorite YouTubers quitting the game and pivoting their content to something entirely different. Or maybe it's the funnest Yu-Gi-Oh! Format that solves a lot of major issues with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Recently, the discourse in the Duel Links community has been fairly negative, with a vocal minority of YouTubers and Redditors constantly critiquing the game and community, mentioning how awful it is.
To be frankly honest, I'm not really exactly thrilled to be playing Duel Links right now.
The community is f***ing dog shit. The community is some of the absolute worst people I have ever encountered playing a video game.
So if you watch this video to the end, I think that Undead from Team 6K and I will be able to highlight the truth behind Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links and show that the game might just be better than you think. Let's tackle the elephant in the room. Skills. Everybody loves to hate them. And if you've been playing Duel Links over the years, you'll have noticed that Konami's design philosophy has substantially changed since 2017. Back in the day, skills like Destiny Draw were broken. Today, if your skill doesn't do at least 3 things for your deck, then odds are you're not making it out of Platinum rank. So from the perspective of missing that slower, more calculated Yu-Gi-Oh! Where beatdown was a valid skill, then yes, modern Duel Links will feel like you're snorting G Fuel and clicking a yellow button. And to be fair, there have been some really cringe skills in recent times. I'm looking at you, Predaplants. But on the other hand, let's consider the fact that Duel Links was never a Time Wizard format. Yes, it started at old school levels of power, but that was bound to change with releases over the years. And with how quickly Konami released cards, it's no surprise that Duel Links caught up to speed with Master Duel in terms of both card pool and power. If you played Duel Links for that slower T-set pass style gameplay, then of course the current state of Duel Links will feel bad. And it's not just that, all modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Will feel bad. But just hear me out for a second. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually really fun.
What?
Just hear me out, alright? Now, some people say that Duel Links is just Master Duel Lite, and this is the genesis to my point. It's actually not. I find Duel Links' gameplay to actually be better than Master Duel's in a lot of ways. Here's why. Before we continue, I just want to put out a disclaimer. I am by no means hating on Master Duel whatsoever. And in fact, I think Master Duel is pretty cool, and you'll probably see me play it on this channel at some point. But I do have a preference. I really do like Duel Links, so just take it for what it is. Going first in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is about setting up a powerful end board in an attempt to prevent your opponent from playing the game. And going second involves breaking your opponent's end board and pushing for lethal damage. This rings true for Master Duel, yet a lot of Duel Links players will relate to that statement as well. And something we can all agree to, regardless if you like older Yu-Gi-Oh! Or modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, is that the funnest parts of playing the game are the points of interaction between you and your opponent. Nowadays, that often means playing hand traps to slow your opponent down or using your boss monsters to negate your opponent's effects. The main issue that I and many players have with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the time it takes you to set up a powerful board. If you don't have a hand trap or a point of interaction, your opponent's combos often last long enough for you to take a piss and warm up that leftover pizza from the other night, just to come back to see your opponent is only halfway through their Salaman Great combo and still hasn't done anything impressive yet.
Whoa.
Safe to say that's not very fun or engaging, but at least you have your pizza though. That's a huge barrier of entry for Master Duel and the TCG. Even if you did have a hand trap, you then need to know your opponent's deck to hit their optimal target. That's pretty daunting for new and returning players. Let alone the fact that you need to constantly right click to allow your opponent to keep playing, which only contributes more to the insane amount of time it takes them to play in the first place.
Constantly having to refuse the fact that you want to activate Malice because you are waiting for the end of your opponent's main phase to activate it means that you're going to spend a lot of time simply clicking no while your opponent does their combo and tries to establish their board on the first turn of the game. Now, I didn't actually end up getting to the master rank, but was it fun on the trip there? Nope, not for me.
Now, luckily, Duel Links has skills, and for as much as people hate them, they expedite the end board substantially. Take a mid-tier deck like Utopia, for example. Pretty much every time they go first, they'll end their turn with 5 disruptions, those being 3 monster negates, 1 omni negate, and a flex disruption like Abyss Dweller or Giant Hand. In Master Duel, if you ended your first turn with 5 disruptions, that would be pretty good based on the fact that your opponent only has 5 cards to play. But the key point here is that the time it takes to build a Utopia endboard is substantially less time than it takes to build full combo Snake Eyes. So if the funnest parts of Yu-Gi-Oh are the points of interactions with your opponent, doesn't it make sense to expedite the less fun parts of Yu-Gi-Oh? Watching your opponent full combo? I'd rather see a few cool animations and yellow button presses for 60 seconds than watch my opponent summon out their entire deck in 8 minutes just to finish on the same endboard anyway. And decks like Utopia still have points of interaction. They're just a lot more obvious than what you'll see in Master Duel. They're going to activate Utopia double. In response to the double, now we know it's coming, we're going to activate a duplicate, banishing a card from our graveyard and bouncing the double back to the deck. Now, the biggest issue that I have with skills is that there's no window to respond to them specifically. This wasn't a major issue when skills were less broken, but nowadays Konami's printing broken abilities like play a boss monster for free. Oh, he let it go through. If that last set card is Red Rain, we actually freaking win. Let's go, dude. Oh my god. He does not get a point of interaction here. We will synchro summon our crystal clearing synchro dragon. Yeah, when you play Speedroid well, it seems like they never stop. Yes, because it's a good freaking deck. To that, I'd say they should address the skill design so that any free card that you get off a skill is set face down first. So you have to flip it up to start a chain link. A lot of skills already do this, but it's crystal clear when Konami specifically avoids this to make a skill stronger. I don't think skills are perfect, but I do think they solve a fundamental issue with modern Yu-Gi-Oh, and I really like the dynamic gameplay they provide. Being able to play decks that never saw historical success in Yu-Gi-Oh because of skills is really cool. My last true gripe with skills is that I wish they had less restrictions so you could cook more with deck building. And I also wish that the generic skills were actually good, as opposed to whatever this is. But in any case, to those who say you should just play Master Duel, I say no, you shouldn't. You can certainly play both, but Master Duel does not have objectively better gameplay. And in my opinion, Duel Links actually scratches that modern Yu-Gi-Oh itch without having to sit through those minutes of combos like you have to do in Master Duel. On a side note, I do think it's funny seeing YouTubers like Mekklord say that you should just play Master Duel, but then in the same video he also says that he won't be playing Master Duel.
What's the point of playing Duel Links over Master Duel when Master Duel has even more cards and you actually get to play more of the game because the skills don't exist? And speaking of Master Duel, I'm not playing that either.
I think he just doesn't like modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And fair enough, that's totally valid. I just think that there's a small, very vocal minority of Redditors and YouTubers that don't like modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And spread a false narrative that Duel Links is dead or it's a poorly designed game. Given that Duel Links has taken such large strides in power creep these last few years, I understand why people who like old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Might be upset with the game. To that, I'd highly recommend you getting into Time Wizard formats like GOAT, Edison, or Hat format. Those all have stagnant card pools, so it's impossible for them to suffer to power creep. And I guarantee you that there's a community of people out there that all love the same kind of gameplay you liked in the earlier eras of Duel Links. Whether that's normal summon beatdown with Berserk Gorilla and GOAT format, or synchro summoning Stardust Dragon as your boss monster at Edison, there is a Time Wizard format for you. But the fact of the matter is, Duel Links is modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, and it's pretty fun too if you give it the chance. Especially in recent times, the Duel Links formats have been much more diverse than what Master Duel has had over the last year.
POV your new Master Duel player.
It's time to learn Snake Eyes.
For the new main combo, summon Diabellster. Activate to set original from deck. Activate it. Send Diabellster to grave to summon Ash.
15 minutes later.
End your turn. This end board.
Where do I start again? Yu-Gi-Oh! In general has a new player problem, and that's partially because we don't have a casual way to play the game that's widely accepted by the community. Take Magic the Gathering, for example. They have an insane, tight-knit community, and this is in part due to the fact that Wizards of the Coast promotes multiple different formats for players to get into. It doesn't matter if you play Modern or Commander, you're still a Magic player. Commander acts as a casual and entry point to the game. Magic thrives off the fact that the Commander community is so large. Konami runs Yu-Gi-Oh! Very differently. There actually is room for alternative formats to flourish, but Konami never fully commits to them. Take the Speed Duel TCG, for example. It genuinely had a chance to be a legitimate alternative format and entry point into Yu-Gi-Oh! But in typical Konami fashion, they didn't promote it well enough and had some garbage business tactics like banning non-speed duel copies of cards that were legal in the format. I made a whole video on this, so check it out after you finish this one. Same thing for Time Wizard formats. Konami just destroyed the hopes and dreams we had of uniting the mainstream Yu-Gi-Oh player base with the Time Wizard player base by rug pulling the community and changing how Time Wizard fundamentally works. There is a lot of coverage of this online, so I won't go into any further detail here, but the point here is having a cohesive, healthy, general Yu-Gi-Oh community is an uphill battle because Konami does not bring each subset of the community together. They typically just fracture it further. And a big issue with modern Yu-Gi-Oh is the fact that there's so much overhead and complexity that it's just daunting for new or casual players. Try explaining the difference between discarding for cost versus discarding for effect to a player you just introduced the game to. That will probably go over their head. I still know people who are fairly good at Yu-Gi-Oh who picked it up in recent years and still don't understand the differences between discarding for cost versus discarding for effect. This complexity creep inherently makes the game sweatier than other card games like Magic or Pokemon. To have a remotely decent experience playing modern Yu-Gi-Oh, you'll have to have a lawyer level of understanding to problem solving card text and understand each summoning mechanic to their most thorough extent. You have to understand that fusion monsters are special summoned by card effects and synchro monsters are inherent special summons. This is really bad for the future of Yu-Gi-Oh. With seemingly no way to casually experience the game that's considered valid from the overarching community, this game is in a terminal state if nothing changes. In my opinion, Duel Links fills this role quite well actually. Because decks have skills that do so much, they're actually very easy to pilot decks that see success. Yes, it sucks to get sacked by a player that you know doesn't understand the differences between an inherent special summon and a special summon by an effect because they clicked a yellow button and sidestepped both of those mechanics and still got their boss monster anyways. But how else are we supposed to get new players into the game? I think decks like Utopia that have such a low skill floor but are decently good are actually really healthy for Yu-Gi-Oh as a whole. So long as those low skill floor decks have outs that more skilled players can capitalize on, then I think it's fine and healthy. Utopia has clear weaknesses to a skilled player, but a new player can get by with moderate success by clicking their yellow button and watching their pretty animations. Also, for even more casual players, the PvE aspect of Duel Links is actually more popular than you might think. There is a subset of Duel Links players that just roleplay their favorite protagonists and complete arbitrary challenges they give themselves, like summoning all 3 Egyptian god cards against an NPC. The anime angle of the Duel Links is also refreshing, and it can definitely bring in a lot of people that loved the anime as a kid into the game. As it is now, if you watched Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters in high school and you attempt to pick up the game now, you'll probably see your opponent vomit out their entire deck, meanwhile you just normal summon Baby Dragon and passed. That experience probably feels pretty bad for those players. There's no bridge between each subset of the broader Yu-Gi-Oh! Community. And on the topic of community, that's my next point.
The response to the Farfar video has been so interesting to see is because the Duel Links community really does care about the game and really does care about maintaining it alive because it does provide a Yu-Gi-Oh! Experience that is not like the one provided by the TCG or even by Master Duel. The thing that I think is really important to mention too is like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not one game, you know, like there's obviously Master Duel, Duel Links, TCG, OCG, Rush Duel Links, all of these like versions of Yu-Gi-Oh! And even like retro formats like GOAT, Edison, some people are still playing the Dark Force games, some people are still playing the Game Boy Advance or Nintendo DS games, right? All of these versions of Yu-Gi-Oh! Exist and are valid, and I don't think it's right to like bring someone down because they don't enjoy the same version of Yu-Gi-Oh! As you do. I don't think it's right to like bring someone down because they don't enjoy the same version of Yu-Gi-Oh! As you do. Yeah.
Now, I want to address the point that the Duel Links community is toxic and horrible. I was watching this video from Mekklord called "The Duel Links Reddit Community Definitely Isn't Toxic." He basically goes through the subreddit and shows basement-dwelling Redditors dunking on Timmys picking up Yu-Gi-Oh! For the first time. And yeah, that's pretty cringe. But let's be real, this is actually a general Yu-Gi-Oh! Community issue and not a Duel Links specific one. Yu-Gi-Oh! Just as a game has an aging player base and a divided community. One of the biggest issues with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, in my opinion, is how divided each subset of the community actually is. We have anime lovers, the Time Wizard players, the Duel Links players, the Master Duel players, the TCG players, and the card collectors, which admittedly there are less of nowadays, but you get the point. Konami pretty much only supports the modern TCG and more so recently, Master Duel. This has a cascading effect on the community level as well. Duel Links has been viewed as a second-rate way to play Yu-Gi-Oh since its release. The general Yu-Gi-Oh community views it as a cute way to play, not a legit way to play Yu-Gi-Oh. Even if this is partially a systemic issue on Konami's part, it's still sad in my opinion. Fortunately, I think the Duel Links community is stronger now more than ever. It's also nice to see Duel Links get some spotlight from Farfa and MBT, who are more mainstream Yu-Gi-Oh players. Since DK left the game, there have been so many other creators step in to fill that void. I can list so many Duel Links YouTubers who are passionate and post positive content about the game. Team 6K, Kuchu Train, TB Army, Tomatosaurus, me. There are so many, I can't even list them all right here. You know the Duel Links community is tight-knit because the moment that Farfa made a video on Duel Links, we got a chain link of like 6+ reactions to reactions of the video itself. Clearly we care about the game, and there's so much positivity from the YouTubers that I mentioned that I just don't agree with Mekklord's take that the Duel Links community has the worst players in any video game. We make videos covering this game, and there are plenty of Discord community servers that highlight Duel Links as well. But us YouTubers post these videos and make these communities because we love the game. And yes, there are YouTubers that doom post, and that brings the overall morale in the community down. Even Farfa's video had a negative angle on Duel Links, the sad decline of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. But that's why I'm making this video, the insane comeback of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. The community is stronger now more than ever. The gameplay is actually good and solves legitimate flaws with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links isn't a third-rate way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! It's actually a viable alternative to Master Duel if you give it the chance. I actually wish that instead of just making one video hopping on Duel Links, Farfa committed to the game and did a King of Games run to actually experience what it's like to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links from a full perspective. And this is something that all subsets of each Yu-Gi-Oh! Community has in common. We're all tight-knit. After the news that Konami would stop supporting Time Wizard, E3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Kept it pushing and is still fostering a booming Edison community, hosting tournaments that are way more successful than anything Konami has going on. What I hope to do with this video is spark another discussion about the broader Yu-Gi-Oh! Community as a whole. Why do we need to be so disconnected from each other? Even if Konami doesn't support us, we can still come together as a community and support each other. The quote-unquote anime boomers should still be equally as accepted as the G-Fueled Master Rank players and the Duel Links players. We all love Yu-Gi-Oh! Sure, we might like different parts of the franchise, but why do we need to be so fractured? Now, another point I'd like to highlight is the monetization of the game, because that's also talked about so much and I have a lot to say about it. Duel Links suffers from the fact that it doesn't have a direct crafting system like Master Duel. But in another light, I actually think that Duel Links is more approachable now than ever. And that's because upon loading into a new account, you were basically given 2 Utopia structure decks which can carry you all the way into Platinum rank. It's also a pretty good time to bring up box chips. I mentioned that there's no direct crafting system like there is in Master Duel, but for those unaware, box chips are a currency in the game that you get from leveling your character or playing one of the regular bi-weekly events that let you craft cards from older boxes. When the mechanic first came out, it was pretty cringe because like who wanted to craft Axe Raider in 2023? But Konami's been consistently updating the card pool, and nowadays you can actually pick up some really good cards, notably Forbidden Chalice, Forbidden Lance, and more. Now, while I don't think it's as good as Master Duel's crafting system, it's definitely still good, especially paired with the fact that when you pull for cards in Duel Links, the card you want is guaranteed after a certain number of pulls. For example, in a main box, there's 180 packs. Each ultra rare card is guaranteed in that 180 packs. To me, this is one of the best card pulling systems in any gacha game. This is both good for free-to-play players and paid players as well. Take Pokemon TCG Pocket or Master Duel for example. You can spend hundreds of dollars on your packs and there is still no guarantee that you will get the card that you want. Fortunately, in Master Duel you are able to convert 3 ultra rare cards you don't want into 1 ultra rare card that you do want. But that sort of brings up a major point that I wanted to talk about related to both Master Duel's pulling and crafting systems. The secret pack mechanic is actually garbage. Sometimes a card that you want is in a limited time secret pack, which, like I said earlier, there is no guarantee that you will get a card that you want. And once that limited time pack goes away, you either have to pull a random pack you don't care about, or the master pack with a card pool of 10,000 possible cards to hopefully get enough crafting materials so you can make the card you actually bought. And in Master Duel, because crafting inherently goes negative in material, if you're a free-to-play player, you can really only make one deck and some stables. You can probably plan your account around making a couple engines like Kashtira and Snake Eyes and try to mix and match them, but if you're free to play and you wanted to go from playing DDD to Dragon Link, you're gonna have to wave goodbye to your DDD deck. In Duel Links, if you're free to play, you can plan your pulls around boxes that have multiple good decks. Then you can snowball your progression and have a large variety of decks to play. Take the latest box for example. If you pull it 3 times, you'll have Despia and Chimera, 2 really cool meta-relevant decks right now. And if you're a pay-to-play player, you at least know how much money you have to spend to get that ultra rare that you want. And this is not to say that Duel Links has a good monetary system. Let's be real, they nerf skills from previous sets and release busted skills for new sets all the time to incentivize players to buy the latest box. Co-money is co-money regardless of whatever game you play. But either way, I just think that the Duel Links system gets more hate than it should, and Master Duel gets more praise than it should. I think realistically a blend of both systems would actually be the best for the players. All this negativity in the community has really got me itching to make a discussion video about Duel Links, because I honestly love the game and I think it's the best place it's been in years. I'm having so much fun, and it's kind of weird for me to see so much hate for the game going on because it's just not what I'm experiencing. I think a lot of the hate is unwarranted. Also, Duel Links is doing very well for a game that released almost a decade ago. Duel Links isn't a perfect game, but neither is Yu-Gi-Oh as a whole. There's constant doom posting about Yu-Gi-Oh product dying, or Master Duel is being terrorized by malice. I really think Duel Links is just a fresh take on modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And if you haven't played it in a while, I highly recommend you actually trying it out as your main way to play for at least a month. You might just like it. Now, I think it's time for me to pass it over to Undead from Team 6K. I'm sure you all know who he is, but if you haven't yet, make sure to drop our boy a subscribe. Let's go.
Yo guys, Undead here. I freaking love Duel Links. You guys have no idea. But I'm not a sheep. Konami doesn't have the wool over my eyes. I'm not a bootlicker, but I'm also not a doom poster. I can see everything that's bad about the game, but that doesn't make me forget about everything that I love about the game. A lot of people are starting to call this game a mini Master Duel now, with power creep getting to a point where decks are more complicated and end boards are much stronger. People feel like they were sold a false bill of goods. I'm not gonna lie guys, if you're upset that Duel Links had power creep, it's kinda on you. You probably saw some years ago that Duel Links was a more tame version of Yu-Gi-Oh! A version you were more interested in, a version that's easier to get into, and you thought that this is what makes Duel Links worth playing to you. That's perfectly fine, but you're imposing your view of what Duel Links is onto it. Just because you wanted that out of Duel Links doesn't mean that that's what Duel Links was meant to be. It's just like how in the TCG, when links dropped, people thought that they existed to slow the game down, but it only wound up speeding the game up. That was totally projection by the community, because Konami never said a damn thing about slowing the game down, and just like in Duel Links, Konami never said Duel Links was all about old style Yu-Gi-Oh! When you set up expectations like that, you're dooming yourself to be disappointed every time. If you set your expectations to be more realistic, you aren't as likely to be disappointed, and you'll allow yourself to be more appreciative of what is really there, rather than wasting your time thinking about what you wish was there. From the time I started playing the game in 2017, I knew that it was bound to become what it is eventually. I knew that it had to, and not to sound arrogant, but I had too much insight to see it any other way. The speed at which cards were released in Duel Links at the time was so much faster than the speed at which they were released in the TCG and OCG. Within the span of like 4 or 5 years, Duel Links had half the cards the TCG had, and the TCG took more than 2 decades to get where they were. With the speed of releases, it's only natural that Duel Links would catch up eventually, and the fact that Duel Links has actually slowed down its releases thanks to Rush Duel has allowed this game to actually take longer to catch up than it otherwise would have. Not that I like Rush Duel, but I definitely appreciate that it slowed down the Speed Duel release rates. The same with Skills too. I knew that skills had to go through power creep in order to further justify playing this game. My thought process was, eventually Duel Links is going to be on the same timeline as OCG or TCG, or close behind it at the very least, like Master Duel is now. And once we were there, people are going to be forced to see that Duel Links isn't just baby Yu-Gi-Oh, caveman Yu-Gi-Oh, or fake Yu-Gi-Oh. It's a separate format with a separate ban list and separate rules that are all intentionally there to give a different gameplay experience. I saw that all in 2017, and in real time we get to see that happening. My expectations were not only realistic, but they ended up coming true. So there isn't any disappointment in my heart over what could have been, and I can appreciate what we have.
But Undead, I don't like modern Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay.
It's completely fine if you don't like the way modern Yu-Gi-Oh is, but in my experience, most of the people who don't like modern Yu-Gi-Oh are the ones who haven't allowed themselves to delve into what makes modern Yu-Gi-Oh work. Because the people who actually dive into this game actually wind up loving how complex and interactive this game is in comparison to other games. The TCG is a legitimately fun game if you'd only give it a chance. If you just learn the meta, learn matchups, learn how to interrupt at the right time, learn how to deviate from your combos, and learn how to tell which combo is necessary for which situation. It isn't as hard as it sounds, and I've witnessed countless people go from Yugi boomers to modern pros, all because they gave it an honest go. Because modern Yu-Gi-Oh is not inherently bad. There's a lot of summons, but yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh is the special summoning game, and it always has been. There may be more of it now, but there's also more ways to stop it now, and with hand traps being in the game, the interactivity of this game is massive. You might get hand trapped to death and think that hand traps are what ruined Yu-Gi-Oh, but if you played Yu-Gi-Oh competitively, you'd see that you should have picked a deck that's more resilient to hand traps. Or perhaps you'd see that it's not a hand trap problem broadly, but rather that individual cards are the problem. Cards like Floodgate, cards like Lingering Effect hand traps that can completely prevent the opponent from playing the game, all of which are purposefully withheld from Duel Links card pool either by not releasing them in the first place or by banning them the same format they get abused in. It's no secret that the way that TCG has handled problem cards has been one of the most embarrassing things about being a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Honestly, same with the OCG and Master Duel. Just letting the floodgates fly like that, because in the designer's mind, it's a necessary evil to deal with all of the bullshit people are able to pull off when left unchecked. Duel Links has a completely different solution that doesn't fuck up the gameplay. Instead of letting these floodgates and lingering hand traps roam free, they make the field smaller, deck smaller, extra deck smaller, and starting hand smaller. So there's so much less you can accomplish, either because your deck's not big enough to fit in everything you need to pop off, you need to make sacrifices in your extra deck to not screw yourself over. Your field size legitimately limits you from so many combos, and your hand size prevents you from having as much gas to work with. Duel Links was and is designed with all of the TCG's obvious mistakes in mind when it comes to gameplay, and Duel Links creatively finds ways to sort of start Yu-Gi-Oh from scratch with a fresh take and play out a new history, with some decks that never got a chance to be competitive being super good, and some decks that were super competitive in the TCG still being competitive in Duel Links, but to a less insane degree that fits the format better. Duel Links has the benefit of hindsight when it comes to card releases. It can see how good or bad things were in the TCG and release things accordingly with that knowledge. Obviously, there have been a few times where they've messed up, but those mess ups are only natural in a game like this, and they use the ban list to solve the problem, usually without killing the deck unless it's necessary, whereas the TCG has no problem releasing something utterly broken on purpose, then nerfing it into the ground. Cyber Angels was too damn strong for its time period when it came to Duel Links, so they kept nerfing it and power creeping the game until Cyber Angels was at an acceptable level while still being meta relevant. I look back at the whole history of Duel Links and I see a whole history of problems happening and then being solved. But then I look at the TCG's history and I see a history of just problems being a constant factor in the game. Konami completely unwilling to let the bullshit game-killing cards die until it's been far too long, if they ever solve the problem at all. It isn't that TCG gameplay is bad, it's that the gameplay gets stopped in its tracks by gameplay killing cards. If you take those out of the equation and just see two solid decks dueling against each other at the highest level, then you're seeing interactive gameplay, grinding, and intelligent moves. Everything you want to see in a card game is literally the same in Duel Links. Please watch any tournament stream and you're going to see the exact same thing playing out, except that we don't have Max C, we don't have Skill Drain, we don't have Tikaboo, we don't have Mystic Mine. We had Summon Breaker, but it got banned. We have Droll, but with modern skill design it doesn't matter because through Droll we can often still get 2 searches instead of just 1. We have Lancia and Loki. I don't like that Lancia exists in this game. That's one blemish on this game's gameplay that I just can't defend, but when compared to the TCG, is way more likely in Duel Links that you can grind it out and have a solid game against your opponent with a better player player takes the game rather than the lucky player. Let's say hypothetically, we were to remove these bullshit floodgatey cards from the TCG, freeing the TCG from the tyranny of false gameplay. That would honestly make the TCG way more comparable to Duel Links in terms of gameplay, but then why would you play Duel Links instead of the TCG in that case? If Duel Links no longer has the advantage of a healthier ban list, what's the point of it? First of all, you can't ever choose whether or not you go first or second in Duel Links. In the TCG, the fact that you can choose has caused games to be decided by blowout cards that are only good going first or only good going second, especially coming in from the side deck, because in a best of 3 format like the TCG, 2/3 of all games are played using the side deck. Cards like Lightning Storm, Evenly Matched, Sphere Mode, while none of them would be worth main decking in a going first deck, you can easily side them to completely blow out your opponent, invalidating their whole defense and trivialize the whole game. Or, if you're going second deck, you can blind second and the opponent's going to be at a disadvantage because Konami has created a situation in the TCG where blowout cards are kinda necessary. In Duel Links, blowout cards are inherently risky because you never get to choose to go second. And for cards that are only good going first, you can never choose to go first either. You are pushed into a situation where you either have to play cards that are good both going first and going second, or you have to accept that some of the cards you might draw might not be useful when you draw them. And that's okay for some decks, but that's still a balancing mechanism in place that prevents these blowout cards from absolutely killing the gameplay. This is something completely unique to Duel Links out of all the Yu-Gi-Oh format, and that's only one piece of what makes this game worth playing over the others if the card pools were hypothetically equalized. Skills are the other big factor that makes Duel Links worth playing over the other games. Yeah, I know. A lot of you watching probably hate skills, but hey, just hear me out. Your favorite Duel Links YouTubers are complaining about the most busted skills of all time and blaming every skill in existence for the crimes of a few of them. Yeah bro, I agree. Dragonic Contact is a bullshit skill and Shadow Winda is a big problem for the majority of players that don't know how to play around it. But let's not sit here and act like the Crystal Beast skill, for example, is a problem. The skill does a ginormous amount for the deck. It's basically a custom card with how damn fucking powerful it is, but let's see how that translates competitively. Yeah, not that big of a deal. Definitely a strong deck, but it's not that fucking big of a deal. My problem with this community at the moment is that it goes overboard complaining about aspects of this game's gameplay that aren't actually problematic. We can literally see these skills being used in tournament streams, but the game's still being back and forth and interactive. A skill may be a problem skill, but that's the same as a card being a problem card. I don't think that you should bash all skills because some of them are badly designed. There's this really sneaky propaganda trick where you can imply certain things in order to demonize your opposition. Without outright saying that something's bad, you can make the listener believe that they are bad. The propaganda that's been working on the Duel Links community right now is that if you look at the meta, every single deck has a super powerful skill. This makes your brain think, oh damn, skills have completely taken over the game. We are under some tyrannical regime by skills. But this isn't the reality. Skills are patching up the weaknesses of decks, giving them more plays to be able to go second with, since going second is inherently weaker in every other format, and skills are also providing decks with the consistency and follow-up that they may lack inherently. Yeah, you can definitely point out the skills that will do too much, but let's not conflate every skill with the ones that are doing too much. We can see in competitive gameplay that the gameplay is still good between the vast majority of decks, and people adapt to what their opponents are going to be capable of, knowing what their skills are going to let them do. Funnily enough, some years ago in Duel Links, the way people talk about skills now was the way people were talking about trap cards back then. You might not remember it, but I remember it fondly because it was so hilarious to me. People say that skills play the game for you today, which is honestly completely untrue outside a couple specific cases, and people back then said that traps played the game for you. Also untrue. People say now that every deck is just a yellow button deck, and back then people were saying that you can just throw Karma Cut and Floodgate into any deck and get king of games with it. So many people wanted the good traps to get banned, and when you looked at those duelists, they were playing outdated decks that just couldn't hang with that era's level of interruption. Right now, competitive players are managing to play and win against their opponents, even though their opponents use a skill. It's mostly just people who refuse to learn and adapt that think all skills should be removed from the game. I agree that certain skills should be removed, but you gotta stop making yourself look like a scrub, bro. If you're still complaining about the Utopia deck when that deck's the most predictable deck ever, a deck that we should all know how to beat by now, then it might be time for you to learn rather than being resigned to your defeat. You don't have to lose, man. And once you start metagaming, you'll see that the game isn't dead, you just weren't playing it for real. I remember back in Odd Eyes and Orcas format, people would not stop complaining about those decks, but when that format ended, every time I talk to somebody about that format, they actually missed it, because in reality, they had fun playing that format. Once I realized many years ago that people only realize how much fun they had after a format ended, I allowed myself to enjoy the formats we had while they were there, accepting whatever bullshit was happening and just adapting to it, and feeling a sense of accomplishment because of the way I decided to adapt to it. I want you guys to look at the deck you guys have decided to main this format whenever you happen to be watching this video, and ask yourself if you legitimately enjoy that deck. If you do, then appreciate it and the gameplay you get to have with it, because no deck lasts forever. If you don't enjoy it, then next time you pick a deck, don't pick it based on where it is on the tier list. Pick it based on whether you think you'd have a good time playing it. But of course, still make sure it's a meta relevant deck so you don't get dog walked. When you play a deck you enjoy, you have a better outlook on the game. And the more you enjoy a deck, the more you'll want to play. And the more you'll play, the more you'll find ways of adapting to the other decks too. Now, don't get me wrong guys, I'm not saying that people like Mekklord are wrong about all of his negative points about the game. I agree with almost everything Mekklord says, but I also know that when you only focus on the negative, it's easy to no longer see the positive. And that's why what Prestige and I are trying to do today is shed light on the things that we love about this game. And hopefully you guys can let us know in the comments what you love about this game too. Loving something isn't being blind to all its negatives. We have to see both the positives and the negatives, and hopefully watching this video has helped you to do the same. Thanks for having me on, Prestige. Everyone subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys back on Team 6K. Back to you, Speed God.
This video isn't a Master Duel versus Duel Links debate. It's just to point out that Duel Links is actually fun, and Master Duel doesn't need to be the only way you experience Yu-Gi-Oh! For sweaty players, they can still scratch their modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Itch, and for more casual players, they have PvE for a fun experience. Duel Links is a really good game, and I think there's a lot to like about it. I genuinely use it as my personal vehicle to experience modern Yu-Gi-Oh! On a regular basis. The gameplay is just easier to pick up than Master Duel or the TCG. The power level is similar, the combo lines take less time, and the game is fundamentally the same, and I get to play cards that were underwhelming in the TCG. Take, for example, Crystal Clearing Synchro Dragon. That's a house of a monster in Duel Links, but in the TCG, it was released in the same set as Baronne de Fleur, which is just a more generic, stronger level 10 win synchro. So why would anyone jump through those hoops to make Crystal Clearing Synchro Dragon when they could just make Baronne de Fleur, when Baronne is just stronger and easier to make? Seeing cards like Crystal Clearing, it just is really cool to me. I like being able to play new and interesting boss monsters. Now, what do you think about Duel Links right now? Do you think that Doom posting and YouTubers like Mekklord quitting mean the game is dying? Or do you agree with Undead and I and think that Duel Links is having a major comeback? Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's go. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by clicking the first link in the description or shopping on TCG Player with my affiliate link. In 2025, I want to be more consistent with my uploads and get these videos out at least once a week. Lastly, I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will catch you in the next one.